Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. I do really appreciate it. So first, before we get started on our topic today, which is financially rewarding the health conscious, which I do need to mention that today's show is brought to you by Health IQ. I do need to remind you of what's happening in a few days, just in case those of you want to get on board and want to participate. We've got the next 30-day manifestation challenge happening on February 1st. And I'm letting people in now to the private Facebook group in order for you to watch some of the videos and sort of get caught up and get your questions answered and listen to the podcast on vision boards and why your vision board isn't working, and to make sure you're all prepared to start February 1st off clean, high energy, high vibration with committing to whatever practice makes sense for you for 30 days. So come on over to jjflazanes.com and click on the free tools and resources and find the Manifestation Challenge and register. And a quick request, if your Facebook name is different than your email, there is a question when you click to join the Facebook group that will tell me what that name is. It makes it a lot easier for us over here to approve you into the group because some of you have different Facebook names than your email addresses. So I need them to match before we say yes to allowing you into the group. Again, that's jjflazanes.com. Click on free tools and resources, and we'll see you inside the Facebook group. Now, today's show, Financially Rewarding the Health Conscious, is important because for two reasons for Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. First of all, most of you who listen to the show have reached out to me in some way. You've come to the event, you're in the Facebook group, you're sending me emails, you care about your health, at least on a spiritual side, right? And a lot of you care about it on all levels. But imagine if you got financially rewarded because of that. Where in your life would you be getting a discount or can save some money or get money back because of those lifestyle choices that you make? And today I'm interviewing Munjal Shah, who's the co-founder and CEO of Health IQ. But it's not just his service that's of interest for me and for you to know about. It's also his story, because his story is also about attraction. And his story is about how he manifested the perfect next career choice for him and his calling, his message, his bigger purpose in life. And so I really want you to hear all sides of this conversation, that it's not just about Health IQ and what it is they can do for you, and in terms of you saving money and having your family be protected financially in the case of your absence, but also the journey he went on to get where he is, and to see what had to happen to him, both through contrast and through what we would call, a problem or something happening that turned into and created what is now a major company that he owns and is his life's work. So let me tell you a little bit about Munjal. For those of you that just want to check it out right now, you can go to healthiq.com/SPE for Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. Again, that's healthiq.com/SPE. So you can take the quiz, you can get a quote. There's actually a daily quiz you can take, and there's even research and resources every day to learning new things. So it's a pretty cool site. So let me tell you about Munjal. Munjal is the co-founder and CEO of Health IQ. Health IQ uses science and big data to provide special rate insurance for health-conscious people, such as marathoners, triathletes, vegans, cyclists, and more. Prior to Health IQ, Munjal was co-founder and CEO of Like.com, which is a computer vision machine learning company that he sold to Google, and co-founder and CEO of Andale, eventually sold to Alibaba. He's an advisor and investor in Rockfuel, Meebo, which he sold to Google, Swell, sold to Apple, Blindsight, sold to Amazon, Lift Labs, sold to Google, Kabam, TaskRabbit, Pubmatic, Interaxon, Ubiome. Anyway, this list goes on. Munjal has a master's in CS from Stanford. So please help me welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you. You're a pioneer, and I love what you're doing. I love that Health IQ is a company that is rewarding people for being healthier. And I heard your show earlier this month, and I was impressed by your story. And I want to definitely share your story with our listeners, because I think I try to encourage people to follow their passion. I know it's something you talked about at the end of the show in terms of following your passion, taking time to be present in all aspects of health, whether it be from the spiritual side, from the health and wellness side, from the relationship side. Like there's nothing more important to me than being present. And I love what you said about having your mission find you. So tell us a little bit about the story about how you started Health IQ and why. Why did you start this company?
So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to create companies, and I spent most of my adult life trying to do that. And I finally reached kind of, a great milestone in something I had been seeking for 10 years, 80 hours a week, sort of thing. And that was I sold my company in 2010 to Google, and it was a shopping company that had used what's called computer vision technology. So we actually searched inside of photographs, looking at the color, shape, and pattern of a handbag or a dress, and we'd find visually similar ones. And I was like, wow, this is great. This is what I always wanted. And the very next day, I had signed up for a 10K race, and I wasn't terribly healthy at that time or worked out a lot, but for some reason I forgot why I had signed up. And I went and ran it, and in the middle of it, I ended up with chest pains and ended up in the ER. And I was 37. I remember at the time, I was scared when it was going on and I was in the race, but I was also a little upset because I was thinking to myself, my God, I worked this hard for this long to reach this milestone, and now I'm gonna just keel over. Um, and there's a bit of a defiance, I guess, in my thought process there. And my father had his first heart attack in his mid 40s. Um, and it didn't end up being a heart attack, but it really woke me up, and I kind of rehabilitated myself, lost 40 pounds, changed my diet pretty substantially, um, and just realized that it was a lot of work. Like, it wasn't easy to give up not eating certain things. I had grown up with like the worst diet on the planet. I ate Pop Tarts and Apple Jacks and Frosted Flakes and cinnamon rolls since I was, 12. In fact, my mother moved here from abroad, and she just thought, oh my God, everything they make in America must be so awesome and healthy because these are the people that put the man on the moon. And so she's like, if it's in the grocery store in America, it's probably good for you. Like, that was literally her thought process. And so I ended up just, realizing that it took a lot of work and that being health conscious was effort. And after I lost the weight, I remember people would say things to me like, "Oh God, you're just one of those skinny Indian guys. Like, you don't really have to work at this, do you? You're just genetically lucky." And I'm like, actually, no. Like, you didn't know me 40 pounds ago. I'm only 5 feet 5. Like, 40 pounds on me is a lot of weight,
Mm,
and I have to work at this. And I realized the health conscious are really heroes in society. And over the last 20 years, while most of the country has gotten less healthy, there's actually a group of 40 million people that's really taken responsibility and gotten more and more healthy. And I thought, can we make more of these people by celebrating the people doing it right instead of harassing the people doing it wrong?
I
Like,
love
use a
that.
positive, aspirational metaphor instead of this kind of, harass and cajole metaphor.
Yeah.
And that became the foundation of the company.
So you by this point you were like retired, semi-retired, looking for your next thing when you run the 10K and you had the chest pains. Were you in between? You'd sold your company to Google. Obviously, there was plenty of money there. And were you searching for the next thing, or did you know what you were doing, or how did that happen?
I actually, this was the very next day, and so part of that deal was I had to work at Google for a while to transition, and so I was working there. But then after that, after about another year, I left Google, and my kids at the time were young. So my daughter was, I think when I left, she was like 3, 3.5, and my son was about 4 years older than that. And I just thought, oh, I'll spend a lot of time hanging out with them, and spending time with them while I also just explore what's next for me. And I always thought, oh, I got to find what I want to do next. And then it dawned on me one day. Actually, I took a health class because I was just interested, and um, I loved it so much. I remember the first day, my wife was like, "Oh God, they gave you that much homework?" And I was like, "No, actually, I'm 8 chapters ahead." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "It was so interesting. I just kept reading and reading, and I realized kind of I hadn't found my next passion; it had found me."
Munjal, I took the quiz and I want to ask you lots about this company, but I have to ask your birth sign. What's your birthday? Don't take me your year. Just tell me your birthday and your your month?
Oh, I was born on the 4th of July.
You're my dad's birthday. You're a Cancer. Oh, yay. That makes me happy. You don't know anything more about your astrology, do you?
I don't.
Okay.
I must say it is a big thing amongst certain people of Indian descent, but not with me.
Okay. No, well, it is with me. It is with me. For me, it's a marker of personality. And not just the fact that you're a Cancer, but the rest of what would be in your chart. So, like your moon sign would tell me how you process emotion, which would be very interesting for me to know because thinking of your personality thus far at 37, having sold a company, that was your first company that you sold, or second or third?
I had sold one before to Alibaba, but this was a much more, this was more successful than the last one by a long shot.
So it's interesting that there's a huge work ethic, right, in terms of your expectations, your what you manifest in your life in terms of work and money. So I'm really curious to see what if you think if anything was a disconnect. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's we all get messages when we get them. It's our life lessons. We're really strong in certain areas and then other areas we lack until we have some kind of contrast. For you it was this race and then all of a sudden you turned the corner of sort of health. Like you understood about like prevention and understanding that people who take your quiz or who come to the site like pretty much are people who are doing something. Like they understand that if they take better care of themselves, they'll have a better lifespan. You started this company, so I want to know where was the disconnect for you, do you think, or where was your focus? Did you have sort of a driving pressure to get something accomplished that when your friends told you or your wife or whomever said, oh, you should eat better or whatever, and you're like, yeah.
No, that's exactly how it was. I mean, I remember they would tell me, they'd be like, you have young kids, like, why don't you take care of yourself? You're burning the candle at both ends. And honestly, all that did was make me feel bad about myself. Like that's where I came to this realization that this harassing and cajoling the person on the couch to get off the couch and care is almost a fool's errand that is counterproductive. And that instead we have to use a more positive aspirational metaphor of just highlighting the people that have done it in order to inspire others in a positive way rather than kind of in a negative way. But you're right, there was a disconnect. I don't know, how I lived with that disconnect. Some of it was just ignorance. I remember the other day, this was like 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a gin and tonic, and somebody was like, do you know how much sugar is in a gin and tonic? And I'm like, no, it's like club soda. It's just water with bubbles, right? And they're like, no, it's like 7 Up. And I'm like, what? And some of it's just ignorance. I had never looked at the back of a can of tonic water, honestly, because I'd always ordered it at a bar or a restaurant. I had never actually made it at home. And so it was just a sheer ignorance, partially, and a sole singular focus. Right? I just wanted to be successful in my life so badly that I just kind of pushed out.
Ignored everything else?
I literally had prioritized. I'm like, I want to spend time with my kids, and I'm going to work. And everything else is going to go. I didn't go to guys' night out and, hang out and, watch a football game. I just didn't. That's not something I did for those 10 years.
Right. And so it sounds like your kids, having a potential, oh my gosh, is this a heart attack? My dad had a heart attack. Speaking of which, how are your parents? Are they still with us?
Yeah.
How was their health?
Yeah, my dad's still there, doing great. My mom as well. I mean, they're older now, but they're still healthy and they're still alive. And both are more health conscious, although, my dad waxes and wanes more than my mom does. But, my mom had breast cancer that they caught quite early, so she's doing great. But
good. And how about was your wife one of those people who got on you about your health, or was she in the same boat with you in terms of your habits and diet and stuff?
No, she was so much better. In fact, she had turned the corner well before I did, but it was interesting that I hadn't turned the corner yet. She read this book called Super Baby Food when we had our first child, and she transformed her entire diet and our kids' diets. And so she was, years ahead of me, actually. The transformation, as she will say, is always the case in everything in our lives.
Well, again, you guys are you're the hunters and the gatherers, right? Like our job is to nurture. Our job is to look at that sort of long-term health and relationship aspect. It's just part of being a woman and being 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 able to bear children, and it is part of being a man, masculine energy, and being male of hunting the deer. So some of that is just the way that it is. We're not necessarily built to act like men, women, and I want to talk about sort of some of those criteria that you have to judge that, because in terms of the life insurance, because I find that sometimes different health organizations, they compare notes in different ways, but they sometimes miss the boat. Like there are certain things that are, not, I know there's a lot of data out there. Like if you talk to nutritionists who are vegan versus ones that are paleo, they're going to have different data, and they're going to use different analogies, and they're going to have different positions, and some are substantiated and some aren't. And so I'm just curious as to where you compile from, like, let's say, for instance, taking the quiz. So I have taken the quiz, and I was super proud of myself until almost the very end, because I'd only missed one question. And that one question at the beginning, I missed more than one, but the first question I missed was one of those, are you kidding me, answers, because it was about soup and what ingredient in soup would make it creamier, or not creamier, would make it more caloric. And the first one said cream, but then I looked at the rest of and there were grains, and I think there were beans and something else. Anyway, I had just gotten done, literally on the stove right now is a pot of my vegetable soup. and my vegetable soup can be made vegan very easily. I prefer it with chicken broth, but I made it for I just did a retreat, a health retreat called Releasing What Weighs You Down last weekend.
Right.
And I have a whole bunch of vegans who came, and so I made them vegan vegetable soup, the same exact thing, which is with vegetable broth instead of chicken broth. But mine's very creamy, but I use cashews. I don't use dairy.
Ooh,
I'm dairy free, and I heard that you're lactose intolerant. Right, I use cashews, and I blend it, so it's very, very creamy. So of course I'm looking at this list, and I'm thinking about the calorie content of cheese versus beans, and I'm thinking, well, beans I think have more calories, while the fat in the cheeses, there may be more fat, but I don't know if there's more calories, there's more starch, there's more sugar, which then by chance turns to fat. So I'm like sitting here thinking, and I chose beans, and it's like, no, you're wrong. It's cream or cheese. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know that I think that's accurate.
That one was, I think, a little more subjective. But here's what we found out. Starting back at this idea of celebrating the health conscious. So we explicitly decided that we did not want to build a company that is here to celebrate the healthy. We want to celebrate the health conscious, because being healthy on an absolute scale is not necessarily all your fault or not your fault. You could be born with a certain congenital issue. You could have been exposed to environmental toxin. Like, there are people who are not healthy and it really wasn't their fault. And there's people who, are 95 years old and have smoked 5 packs a day, and they never got cancer. And yes, they're healthy, but they're not exactly people I want to celebrate, honestly. And so we decided that what we needed to do was celebrate the part of health you control, i.e. your health consciousness. And we looked out there and found no way to measure that. And so we said, no, there's no tool for that. The only things you have out there are these self-assessments. How many times a week do you drink? And how many times a week do you exercise? How many servings of vegetables do you eat? And in health, self-assessments don't really work. Right? Like, they don't work in other areas as well. Like, the SAT doesn't ask you, hey, you're good at spatial reasoning? You're like, oh yeah, I'm great. It's like, okay, here's 800 points. Like, it doesn't work that way. Right? So, and I think this is very tribal. Like, I think 4,000 years ago in the tribe, if you said you were unhealthy, you got fed to the lions. Right? So we've learned to hide this, and we therefore don't self-assess well. And so we decided instead, we wrote 30,000 questions, and we just ran an algorithm and calibrated it with 500,000 people, and said which questions correlate the best to the people who went to the hospital the least over the last year. So we didn't even try to get smart. We didn't say, well, this piece of knowledge is the most important for maintaining this health. We literally said, what are the pieces of knowledge that the people who seem to have the best health and the most health conscious really know the most? And what we found were about 3,000 questions, and the current quiz pulls 30 questions at random from that 3,000. And they tended to be all these experiential questions. They tended to be things like things you would only know if you did. So we don't say, hey, do you do Bikram yoga? Or do you do meditation or mindfulness? We're like, when you go to Bikram yoga, are you supposed to drink water in the first 30 minutes? And if you've never gone, you're thinking to yourself, isn't that hot yoga? And I'm sure you drink water. It's like 110 degrees. But if you've gone, the instructor says, no, you got to sweat out the toxins, or I forget the exact explanation for it. But that's an experiential piece that you would only know. And you You get these questions in our app. You only have 30 seconds to answer them. If you close the app and open the browser, it tells us you try to cheat. You never get the same question twice. Like, it's not impossible to cheat the thing, it's just hard. And we did that with question after question. We didn't ask you if you eat low carb. We're like, hey, which of these 4 tortillas at Chipotle has the lowest carbs? Because no matter how many of us try to eat at home and eat well, like invariably you're going to end up at some, restaurant like that with family, and you're going to have to eat your way around a bad menu. We don't say, hey, do you weight lift? We're like, hey, an Olympic barbell unweighted is how many pounds? If you lift, you know it's 45. If you don't lift, you have no idea. And so we found that these deep experiential kind of pieces of knowledge, what they did in the end is they told us who are the people who really have taken responsibility and taken the time to try to learn. And that deep knowledge was basically symbolic of that responsibility. And it may not be that that knowledge is right explicitly or right long term, meaning it might be right today and then we have a new study coming out that changes that. But
Right.
these are the same people. If they took the time to learn this, they're going to take the time to learn the new change too. And so that's how we developed Health IQ. And then, now millions of people have taken it. And we're actually starting to put together some neat research. There's some on our website already and that just shows, we show BMI by state and then Health IQ score by state. And there's a remarkably similar overlap. We can, show a number of other factors. We're actually now looking at Health IQ scores by zip code, comparing it to income. And there's some surprising, normally you think, health consciousness just correlates to people who have areas with higher income, but actually there's some low income but very health conscious parts of the country, and we're going to be putting out some studies around that. And so it's been just a fabulous exploration we've done of just, where are the people, how health conscious are you, and where are the people who are health conscious in the country. And it's quite surprising. It's not just your East Coast, West Coast kind of blue states. It's actually all over the country, but in different little pockets.
Well, I know that from my last retreat because I had people flying in from Rhode Island, from Tennessee, from North Carolina, from Portland, from Hawaii, and so that was really exciting to see a little bit of the population come, and it's very health oriented from a holistic point of view, from a mind, body, soul point of view, which is what I do, because not only do I help sort of support that the food and the exercise piece, but the stress piece, but really the happiness piece, right? Because I find that, and I'm sure there are studies that prove between mindfulness and meditation, and people that are happier generally take better care of themselves. And I know it goes both ways. We can work from the inside out or the outside in. And if you're feeling better, you do better. It's like if you know better, you do better. So in terms of some of that is education, some of that is experiential, put it all together. And I love that you want to celebrate sort of the people who are health conscious. Now I have to ask, because of course, now that I know there's 30 questions, I got 26 right. I'm going to go take it again. I scored 700. Like, what's the maximum amount of points?
The points are calibrated differently, but you'll get a score at the end. And
I did. I'm looking at it. I
want
to know.
198 on the scaled score, that basically means you got the 99th percentile, which is the highest score. So if you get, for example, 180, that means that you're effectively at the 90th percentile.
Okay, I got 184 was my IQ because I missed 4 questions. I'm in the elite. Is there anything higher than elite?
Well, within elite, you can just look at the score, but you're basically, you said 184.
Yes.
You're basically the 92nd percentile in the country.
Okay.
And this has now been calibrated over millions of people.
It says you scored better than 304 million Americans.
Yeah.
304 million Americans have taken this?
No. We take the percentile and just calculate it back to give you a sense of proportion, because a lot of people were like, hey, I scored, in the 60th percentile. That's horrible. That's a D. And we're like, actually, look, that's way above average.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
You still beat 100 and whatever million Americans. Like, you should be excited. That is still something. Actually, a lot of our data showed that those who are health conscious died, even just those in the 50th percentile and up. So just if you scored over 100 versus under, the chances of dying over the next 3 years was 41% lower than those who scored under. And so, look, being health conscious really does improve your mortality because it improves your health. And a lot of it may just be that you take responsibility and take care of yourself. But, that's what we were trying to measure. We were trying to measure the part that people can control, which is, are you taking care of yourself?
I love it. And so one of the other questions that bugged me that I missed. Two of them, fine. I got the two of them. The first one, the soup one, bugged me. Or not soup. The yeah, it was soup because I just made soup. And the second one was a recent study that I didn't read. So I thought, well, I didn't read that study. So I guessed, and I guessed wrong. But of course, you take a chance when you see something like that. But I didn't see a lot of questions about stress management or stress reduction. Is there some? And I just didn't get it in the 30 that I got.
Look, all of us who have gone through a health transformation learn a couple things. One, diet overpowers exercise every day of the week, right?
Right.
Like, you can't out exercise a bad diet. And so what you'll find is the Health IQ test, and again, we didn't do this in any sort of programmatic way. We didn't explicitly take out stress questions. We didn't explicitly put in nutrition questions. We just wrote 30,000 questions of all types and ran them through this calibration with 500,000 people and just said which ones seemed to be the ones they know. And so it turned out nutrition questions mattered a lot. And so
Mm-hmm.
you will see it's very heavily nutrition focused on it.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise does matter some, at least the mental health questions, even though I'm with you, I think they're very important. Just not many of them showed up in that top set, but it may just also be because it's a new thing that
Mm-hmm.
I think the world has only recently become aware of kind of the power of mindfulness, just in the last 5 years or so, and that hasn't made its way into all the health conscious people yet, so it wouldn't show up in this sort of calibration exercise that we did. But it was we don't actually there's not an editorial team that picks it. There's literally an algorithm that says, what is the knowledge that the health conscious people know the most? And those who are not health conscious know the least. So actually, one question we had that actually did very well, but we didn't put it in because we thought it would send the wrong message. Was I don't ask you if you eat fast food. I'll be like, hey, what's the toy at McDonald's last week? And if you're like, oh, it's and we're like, gotcha. Like, how did you
You
even
eat
know
fast food.
that?
Right.
And so
Great
we
question.
ended up taking it out. It's an inverse related question, right? If you know it, you're probably less health conscious. But so it's just lots of information. We keep adding more questions. We keep writing them. And then we also have quizzes you can take every single day. There's a new quiz that comes out, and every quiz gives you the right answer after you answer the question. And so you can always kind of what we call micro learning. You'll just learn along the way just while you're being quizzed.
I love it. I was excited to take the quiz, and I'm excited to learn more because so I have, and I know this show is not gonna be about the difference between necessarily whole life and term, but you are offering term life insurance, correct?
Yeah. So what? After building this whole quiz, we realized that hey, what we want to do is celebrate the health conscious financially. And we said, is there a lot of the benefit of what they do? And we realized it accrues in insurance, either in health insurance or life insurance. But after the Affordable Care Act, you actually by law cannot price health insurance cheaper for the health conscious. But you can in life. I mean, you cannot do it for health insurance. You can do it in life insurance. And so we started exploring it. And so what we sell today is what's called term life insurance at a special rate just for health conscious people. And term life insurance is a gap insurance product, meaning you buy coverage for 10, 20, or 30 years typically. And if you were to pass away, your spouse will get a lump sum payment, which will allow them to live the same standard of living, if you buy enough, as if you were there. Not so the family can still put the kids through college, the family can still stay in the house. And it's not often that people pass away in midlife, but if it does happen, it's usually pretty catastrophic. People don't tend to own life insurance later in life, so that's why we call it gap insurance. You don't need this typically after you're 65 because you've saved up enough money, you've paid off the house. If something were to happen to one of the bread earners, there's a retirement fund usually that's enough to take care of the surviving party. And so when you first have kids and you don't have a nest egg and you need both incomes to make it, or you should certainly get some coverage to ensure continuity and ensure the family has the resources it needs if something unfortunate were to happen. And some people don't like to think about it, frankly. They're like, I don't
Well,
want to
but
think about it, but a
yeah.
responsible parent, a responsible spouse, like you should think about it. And I know I actually find health conscious people are more aware that they're mortal. That's why they don't eat a
Mm-hmm.
donut every day. like they
Right.
kind of get it, and they're good at
Well,
seeing the ghost of Christmas future is kind of what I always say.
well, I think that there's an argument to be made. I have whole life, but whole life is expensive,
Yes.
and usually can't get enough coverage really to make, like, I got it years ago because of how much I had sort of borrowed to start my own business and wanted to make sure that all my bills were paid. And if in the case of my death, that my parents wouldn't get hit or my husband wouldn't get hit, and there would be some money there to cover anything outstanding that I had, plus then they would get some. And that's why I had started. And it became also a vehicle for me to put some money in to save as well and accrue and then just get it back later. But I didn't do term at the time because I wanted to build up sort of that number in the whole life. But there's a certain point in which it's just too expensive,
Right.
really, to keep doing that, where term makes a lot of sense. And I hadn't done term because, well, at the time, again, like I said, I was really focused on that. But this makes a lot of sense. I can't wait to get my quote to see what it would cost in the different levels. And I have a question about that. So let's say I get my quote. Is there an incentive if somebody gets quoted where they are now? Like, if they get healthier, does it reduce? I mean, I know you're buying like a one policy, but what's the flexibility of? I mean, I really love the strategy of rewarding people for being healthier, but if they come in, maybe is there a plan to help them get healthier or stay healthier?
Yeah. So a couple things. So think about when you get term life insurance, it's a bit like not a variable rate mortgage, a fixed rate mortgage, right? Like you get it, you'll have your rate. It won't go up on you, but it also won't go down on you just because you get healthier. But you can always refi. You can always cancel your policy and get a new policy later. And there's no reason
Right.
you can't do that and kind of benefit from your improving health. What we've found is, look, a lot of the people who are health conscious who get special rates with us, they've already made this lifestyle change and they don't need our extra effort to kind of keep them on track. They keep themselves on track pretty well, because this isn't a diet they're on. This is a lifestyle they're on. And this isn't an exercise that they're doing just to lose weight. This is something that's just part of their everyday life. And so we bring them in. We actually get them special rates. It can get up to about 33% off. Some of it's like a straight rate part of our quote. But one of the dirty little secrets in life insurance is that a lot of times you submit, the broker you talk to kind of guesses. He asks you a whole bunch of health questions and says, okay, I think you're going to fall in this bucket. But then later you go to underwriting with the carrier and they look at a bunch of things. They have you do a medical exam, they have you take a blood test. And if you're health conscious, by the way, you want them to have you do those things, because if they don't do those things, they're going to price you as the average for the whole population and you're probably better than average. So you're going to be subsidizing other people if you go and get a policy that doesn't ask for those things. But once they do that, they may find little things, and traditionally you may get quoted a low price up front only to find out the end price isn't the same because when they ran your blood, they found, certain liver enzymes were off or certain other issues were there that maybe you didn't even know about, or maybe you did and you just didn't kind of remember to share with the broker when he was filling out the application. But they're going to check. And so the most important part is not just like what's the quote, it's what's the end price that you really end up with when everything's said and done, and is it the lowest price in the market? And so we worked with carriers to get an initial lower rate, but we also wanted to make sure, like, for example, if you have a family history, with most people, if you don't get our special health conscious policies, you will be knocked down a class. But we worked and said, you know what? This family history is not that correlated. In fact, scientifically, it shows it's only about 15% correlated. And we said, so, if they're really health conscious, can you offset that even if they have family history and not move them down one class? And each class is basically an increase of 25% in your rate. And so we got that for our health conscious folks. Our marathon runners have typically low resting heart rates, and they were getting penalized. It was like, well, your heart's beating so slow, there must be something wrong electrically. And so we went to them and said, no, don't penalize these guys. Their heart's just beating really slow because they run a whole lot. Like, it's just what happens when are that fit. And so we ensured that didn't happen, for that they didn't get penalized for our marathon runners. And our bodybuilders, they were coming back and saying, oh, the BMI here is really high, but BMI is a horrible tool. Like,
It is a terrible tool.
Yeah.
It is a stupid tool.
Yeah, and it really doesn't. I mean, you don't get me started on BMI.
Yeah. No,
hip
me
to
too.
waist
Me too.
circumference is actually a much better tool. And for bodybuilders who have significant muscle mass, like, it turns out Arnold Schwarzenegger's BMI when he won Mr. Olympia was 33.9. He was almost morbidly obese on the BMI scale. Just to give you a sense of how ridiculous it was. And he had a waist the size of, like, 25-inch waist or whatever he had, right, at that competition. And so we said, no, can you use hip to waist circumference ratio, which is a much better predictor of cardiovascular risk and diabetes risk, for our bodybuilders instead of using BMI? And So that's another concession we got carriers to make. So we literally went in and didn't just try to get better rates, but actually tried to make a more fair system for assessing health conscious people that didn't penalize them for things that basically just don't make sense for them. And we continue to get more and more of these every week. Every month, we kind of are able to get another tweak, another change, another kind of modification. Like, this is a journey we're on. It's not just the rates we have today, but it's kind of the rates and the underwriting that we'll be getting over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
I think it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation about the quotes because of my very high score, and I'm happy to give my blood work and my exam and all that good stuff. But what's next for you? So, I'm going to definitely send people over to check out the quiz and to take the quiz. I want to have people sort of get an idea of where they are and to know what's out there for them, to support them, like you said, in terms of you don't have the nest egg, having that backup, having that in place in the case of something happening really just puts you a peace of mind, and knowing that you're going to get a better rate because you're healthier is great, and so everybody's going to check it out. But what's next for you in this journey?
What we want to do as a company is two things. One, we're going to expand the product offering and really work on more insurances. Like, if I can save you money in life insurance, why can't I save you money in dental? Why can't I save you money in vision? Why can't I save you money in disability? Like, we're going to go to every last insurance where kind of health makes a big difference. We can't go to health insurance unless there's a modification to the current law, but we'll go and do this everywhere else that we can, and we'll do this worldwide. Like, I believe that the health conscious are kind of a whole new group in society, and it's a growing trend worldwide. You look at the Chinese, and they have many things in Beijing. I was there not that long ago. You have, fancy cars and nice flats and Louis Vuitton handbags and all these things. But what they want the most, the luxury good they want the most, is health. And so we're going to expand and continue to do this. We're building more data. The more people we get, the more data we're building. Like, at the heart, Health IQ is really a data company where we're building basically the information necessary to reward and improve the world's health. And so we're just going to keep doing this. We have a long journey. When I set out to build this company, I realized, like, yes, my mission found me, but my last two companies I ran for about 5 years before we sold them. And this one, I realized, like, this is my life's work. Like, I'll spend 10, 20 years building this, and maybe that's how long it'll take. And hopefully each day we get better and better, more and more rewards and better pricing and more different insurances for health conscious folks. But that's really the mission and the path that we're on.
All right, a few more questions before we close today's show. The first one, for all the people who are listening, what have you seen, or what would you recommend is the number one thing people should attend to make the biggest change in their health that you see via the data?
Nutrition and just find, there's some horrible offenders, right? That if you just take out, things just start getting better right away. And, they're very obvious things of soda and high sugar items and, lots of processed carbs and things like that. And, but I would say look at that. If you're a little more advanced, I love Robert Lustig's work, the endocrinologist from UCSF, who's you can go read about. There's a great YouTube video actually he's got out there. I would just say look at those things. On the exercise side, I've become a huge fan of not long cardio, but just, high intensity interval training, hits, sprinting. Even on the treadmill, I'll run really fast and then I'll kind of jump to the side and slow it down, and then I'll run really, and rest for a minute, and then I'll run fast for a minute. And I have found tremendous improvement and health benefits. If you want to get really advanced, there's lots of neat things out there on fasting lately.
Yep,
intermittent fasting, but I did a 5-day fast recently where just tea with nothing in it for 5 days. It was an amazing experience. I realized fasting is not old technology, it's new technology. I mean, it's not new technology, it's old technology, right? Almost every ancient religion kind of has this as an element. And but it sounds crazy to people. I got more people told me I was a nut job when I told them I was fasting than any other diet. Yet the science around fasting is actually the most clean in terms of, like, it's not contradictory in the same way. Like, if you look at the science around gluten-free, you look at the science around organic, Yes, there's some good
Right.
science. Yes, there's some science saying it doesn't matter. Like it's very contradictory. But fasting has none of that. But yet, socially, fasting is like people just look at you like you're an alien.
Right. Well, that's probably the hardest thing to give up food, right? Because food is unfortunately used as an addiction for a lot of people too to repress emotion. It's probably the most overused drug we have because it's the most widely acceptable drug that we don't realize we have. So, of course, ask someone not to eat for a little while, and if that's their drug of choice to numb themselves, then that they're going to have a real hard
No.
time with that. Now, what about on the flip side, on the business side? Because, there are people who would love to emulate what you're doing in business and want to know how you became successful. So if you had to give us the top one or two things, whether it be a belief system or accountability or, how to manifest sort of that dream of building something or finding the passion, the career choice, the mission, what would you say helped you the most to be where you are in that way?
I have I will tell you, in Health IQ today, I've done something that I didn't do in my either of my last two companies. And that is that we've just created a very almost overly positive culture. Like it's so positive, if the old me walked into this company, honestly, I'd be like, this is I just want to hurl. Like this is so crazy positive. It just seems almost disingenuous. But we tried it and we just celebrated every person every day in the company. Like we go around and we don't ever ask what you didn't do and why didn't it get done. We're just like, what'd you do today? If you have something awesome, share it. And the whole room will clap for you. And I thought, God, if you celebrate everyone, it's like celebrating no one. Like, we were all taught that. And I realized that's just not true. Everybody wants to be recognized every day. And if you do that, they show up for the company and they show up for each other. And it creates a super positive cycle. And I come to work sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, this place is making me more positive in this weird feedback loop. And so I'd say you think there's a limit, you think there's value to being a devil's advocate or to pointing out what might go wrong with a plan. You know what? The whole world is your devil's advocate, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that the power of just recognizing and celebrating is way stronger than even I knew it was. And so that I would say, see if you could build a world like that. So we literally get together every day. We go around the whole company. Company's about 150 people. We do it really fast, like 25 minutes, and everybody throws out one number. Customer service agent maybe like, I answered 342 emails today, and a salesperson will be like, I sold 52 policies today, or whatever it is. And if it's over a certain threshold, we all clap because we know that's a hard threshold to reach. And so that positivity just resonates in a way that even I had never fully experienced before. It's not that we're being unrealistic. It's just that we've decided that there's this tremendous power to celebration and celebrating the positive. We never ask people, why didn't you do this? How come that didn't get done? We just say, oh, well, if we just celebrate the people doing it right, maybe everybody else will try harder to be the one we're clapping for tomorrow, even if we don't say a word. So that's
Yeah.
one part. I'd say the second part is really something that, I say to a lot of entrepreneurs, which is simply just be more interested in being successful than in being right, and you will be successful. And so much of what we try to do in the world is imprint our vision of what the world should be on it, which we do need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's called having vision. Like you have vision for how the world will be a better place if your company, your nonprofit, your community initiative succeeds. But at the same time, usually you have to modify it some. You think X is kind of what you should bring to the world, and the world goes, well, I like X, but maybe if you twist it a little and turn it into Y, that'd be a lot better. And that flexibility is so important. And by the way, everybody has it. It's just usually they have it when it's clear the thing's about to fail. Like I say, we call this pivoting in startups. Everybody pivots. They usually pivot, when they're down to 1 month of cash. Like that's not called pivoting. That's like you had no choice. The key is to pivot
Right.
early. As soon as you hear feedback from customers or others that you're surveying that you're not kind of got it quite right. And so, but to do that, there's this weird, odd duality of you have to have the conviction and the strength um, to say this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to change the world. And then you have to be a beginner again and have the humility to be like, oops, I didn't quite get it right. I got to change. And usually,
Yep.
very few people can do both of those things. They are either more the second and they're constantly changing. 'Cause, oh, well, John said I should do that. And then I met Will, and Will said I should do that. And I met Tom, and Tom said I should do that. And like every time you meet them, they change their mind. And then you get the other person who's the obstinate person who says, no, this is what I'm going to do. And, they waste 10 years of their life on something that's never going to happen. So, I always say the advice is worth only what you paid for it, which is zero in this case. But, you know,
Well, no, I know. I think no, I think those are very wise, and it resonated with everything that's going on for me. Like I said, I just held the first retreat, and there's 2 more already on the books, and I held the space. I sort of had this idea and this vision of like you're talking about, you get feedback from your audience or from the people that you serve, and that's exactly what happened. I got feedback from the audience that I serve, and I created something to support their growth based on what it was that they needed. And then we got down to sort of the nitty gritty of even the scheduling and what process was going to go when. I stayed completely open. I've never held a space physically, energetically that big before myself. And it was a really interesting experience because I stayed fluid, I stayed flexible, even though I had a goal in mind, which was to help people have transformation and to have these realizations. And so, but it is hard to do because I think you have to, for yourself as the business owner or as the person, even holding the space for your family, sort of have to clean yourself up first. You have to take responsibility for being that really clean, strong, resilient vessel to be able to do that for others, whether it be for health reasons or whether it be for business reasons. Because if we're constantly trying to, like you said in the very beginning of this show, if we're attacking people for not being healthy, it doesn't make them want to get healthy. So we have to be that example that we want people to model after. And so I think that's brilliant because people who are going to listen to this are going to not only care about their health, but they care about their wealth. And they both go hand in hand, and there isn't a disconnect really when we put them all together because it's about forward thinking and balancing that out with being present, being flexible, being resilient. And the most important piece, I think, is also what you were alluding to in terms of your company, being appreciative and being in the moment and having gratitude and celebrating. For us, when I do a 30-day manifestation challenge. It's a free 30-day group that people join every couple months. The next one's in February, and we practice anything from a gratitude journal to an appreciation list to some kind of meditation every day. But it really is about celebrating on some level your life or the fact that something good happened. And I think that is the magic for both a satisfying result, manifesting something good, and a good feeling in the moment. And those 2 things, of course, will keep us all very healthy because when you feel good, you do good. So, Manjula, it has been such a pleasure to interview you today and to share your wisdom with others and to share Health IQ with others. I think what you're doing is amazing. I look forward to getting my quote. I look forward to having a term life insurance with Health IQ and to continuing to be one of those 40 million people who are hoping to lead the tribe, if you will.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
And as a reminder, today's show was brought to you by Health IQ. Make sure to go take your test and get your free quote at healthiq.com/SPE.